get asked quite often. When people are thinking about moving throughout the Lower Mainland, upsizing for more space, just had their second kid, what is it going to be like living here? Where are the best family-friendly neighborhoods? Where has the best community feels? What do the product types look like in those neighborhoods? Is there even availability of things like a 3-bedroom townhouse or a half duplex, or what does the entry-level single-family home price points look like in these neighborhoods? So we wanted to share a few of our favorites throughout Greater Vancouver and just kind of discuss what brings people there, why they're family-friendly neighborhoods, and what the product types look like, what you'll find there, and what the kind of price points that go with those product types are. So maybe, do you want to start?
I do have a family I have 3 kids, so I think I'm well suited for this topic, Denny.
And I'm single, but I'm surrounded by families in my neighborhood.
Yeah, help families. I guess to acknowledge this episode is best suited for those that are less location sensitive. You know, I tend to find that some of these neighborhoods we're going to talk to, there's people that grew up in them and know that they're amazing and go back to them and can ignore the rest of the world. And we run into a lot of people that are very open-minded to different communities in the city and just want to set an anchor for kids and schools and family. And, you know, where do they go? Where are the top picks? You know, we're doing this right before Halloween. So I think a good thing for this is probably going to come out after Halloween, but next Halloween, a good symbol is, where are the trick-or-treaters going? And where are there the most hockey nets and basketball hoops lining the streets? You know, it's, as having kids, I think it's more important. I recognize the importance of you want other kids to get your kids tired. So if you're in an area that's beautiful, but there's no other families around you, you're gonna be spending a lot of your energy entertaining your kids. But if you live in, say, a dense neighborhood loaded with young families, you end up seeing those kids mob up and roam in the streets and run in the streets. And ultimately, I think there's benefits to that. So, I want to get into it. And part of this episode is just to acknowledge areas that have a strong sense of community for families. So, how about I kick it off?
Yeah, let's hear it.
I made a recent, well, not that recent, but I moved to North Vancouver 2 years ago. And my top pick, my first one that I want to talk about is the Ravenwoods neighborhood, which is on the Seymour side of North Van, at the base of Mount Seymour, close to Parkgate. It's Ravenwoods. It's got Seymour Village as a nickname that's more recent, but it's most commonly known as Ravenwoods. And why Ravenwoods? I mean, biggest thing is access to nature. It has a strong sense of community. It's one of those neighborhoods that gets 500 plus trick-or-treaters coming to your door, has mobs of kids roaming the streets with bikes aged from, call it 4 to 12, that hokey gang. And they have a lot of great housing options and different price points, from 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, not you're going to be a 1-bedroom family, but townhouses and even surrounding single-family homes. So why would you choose Ravenwoods? It's mainly because you value outdoors and you love the beauty of North Vancouver. You want outdoor amenities, you want trails in your life, you want quick access to beaches. Ravenwoods is right surrounded by trails. It has the amenities of Parkgate right there. You can go skiing quickly up Mount Seymour. You have Kate's Park for your summer beach sessions right there. And it's safe and quiet. There's a lot of kids, and all my kids have friends in that neighborhood, and we feel like we're missing out on the party. So to give you an idea, a part of the draw with Ravenwoods is the affordability, and it's affordable for a reason. I mean, openly, some people rule this out instantly, but it's affordable because it's a 99-year lease. It's not freehold land. So it gets you a little more bang for your buck. And, but leasehold land, Denny, I'd never buy leasehold, freehold only. If you're buying a new 99-year lease, you have a lot of time left on that lease. The values start decreasing towards the later half of that lease, and under normal conditions, that's when it becomes much more of a concerning conversation. But you just need to know that, it's ideal to have clarity on what the renewal looks like. You don't need to know that early in the lease, but towards the end of the lease. I mean, we've sold properties in False Creek with how many years left on the lease? 6 or something like that?
I think we had one last year that was 12 or 14.
12 or 14? Yeah. So long and short, leasehold, you may openly rule it out, but if you're open-minded to it, know this, that in the last 5 to 10 years, Ravenwoods leasehold land has probably outperformed the market. It's one of the, it's gone up in value just as much as some of the hottest neighborhoods in the Lower Mainland. So it has not held back its appreciation in the last 5 to 10 years at all. Past doesn't predict future, but past performance has been exceptional. What do you get bang for your buck? Well, this is for young families. So let's start with a townhouse. So here's a typical townhouse. I mean, the ranges, you can get a townhouse probably starting at around 1.2, but I want to say a 3-bedroom townhouse that's 1,650 square feet would be about 1.4 million, which for, a Fraser Valley buyer, that's huge. That's a lot of money. But for a North Shore buyer, 1.4 million for 2-car garage, 3-bedroom townhouse, 1,650 square feet, safe community, walkability, parks, trails, everything close by. It's pretty good, in my opinion. And you have outside of Ravenwoods, off Seymour Parkway, there are other options for older townhomes communities where you can get something that's not, say not 5 to 10 years old. That might be more 30 to 40 or 50 years old. A little more yard space, a little more dated. They might have a lower price point of, say, 1.2, but if they're 1.5, they're larger with bigger yards. And some of these older communities, not in Ravenwoods per se, but some of these older communities have a lot of land behind them. So there is a potential development play with some. And I think I touched on this in the past, but it's not uncommon to find a 40-year-old townhouse off Seymour Parkway in the Seymour side of North Vancouver, and they exist in other parts of North Van as well, where your unit entitlement, your proportion of land that you own as a whole development equates to like an East Van lot, like a 4,000 square foot lot. So you're buying a townhouse, you don't have your own property lines, you're part of your unit entitlement on the whole site basically equates like 4,000 square feet. So that doesn't matter to, someone that's buying, when you sell your townhouse 5 years from now to another family. But if there is ever a developer knocking on your door that buys out the whole townhouse community and does a major development, there could be some upside potential there over a longer horizon, like 20 years. But that's not what young families care about. It's the community, it's the safety, it's the proximity. And so townhouses, probably call it 1.4. They can get a little more expensive. They can get up to $2 million for the large layouts. And outside of Ravenwoods, it's surrounded by Dollarton, Indian River, Northlands, Roche Point. That's where you would look for single-family home options, and like a starter, say 2,000 square foot dated home that needs some work might start at around 1.7. Something a little more turnkey is around 2 million, and something updated is probably around 2.2 with significant updates. That's for single-family homes. So North Van is a more expensive market. But I'm very biased to it. I live there and I understand it now. I've been there for 2 years, and I've basically run into people that have never left, or left, came back. And most likely, the listings that we've actually had a number of deals on that side this year. And a lot of the buyers for those deals are people upgrading in that area. So, and we see that in Queen's Park, where people upgrade within. It's a sign of a good neighborhood. When the buyers coming to that are largely people that live close by that want to upgrade, that's a good sign.
I would say that might be at the top of the list for that. North Vancouver is an area where people don't leave.
Yeah.
Whereas other parts of Greater Vancouver, maybe just because they're more connected without bridges, but like it's very common where people grew up in East Van and they're moving to Burnaby, or they're moving to New Est or the Tri-Cities. They're moving east for more space. Versus North Van, it feels like people stay there.
Yeah. And I'm talking about Ravenwoods, Parkgate area, really, base of Mount Seymour, because I'm biased to it. But you talk to people in Lynn Valley, and Lynn Valley is their dream place. They have no intent on leaving. Lynn Valley on paper is just as good. It's just a different cocktail of landscape. You got rivers and a little more amenities in some ways, and a little bit less in others. But if you like golf, you want to be on the Seymour side. If you just value being a little bit more west, Lynn Valley makes a lot of sense, and there's a little more development in that Lynn Valley village up there as well. So North Van as a whole, there isn't many bad pockets in North Van. It's very desirable, and it's just not the most affordable place to live. Yeah. And I'm highlighting Ravenwoods because it's slightly more affordable leasehold land, and it has a good track record of performance. There's appreciation.
I know you're biased because you live there.
Yeah. Well, I don't live there. I live close there, and I have the FOMO of not being there.
Well, if you were to say there is any negatives about that neighborhood, would it be walkability? Just slightly farther away from like shopping and restaurants and stuff like that?
If you're buying a 20-year-old place in Ravenwoods and you live there for 30 years and you sell with 50 years less on your lease, there is a little bit of unsettling unknown. What is that going to do to your values, in 30 years? Is it going to, is there a point where there's a diminishing return? That would be the standout negative that I think runs in most people's mind that are thinking of it as a strict investment play. But from a family angle with kids running around and like your day-to-day life, maybe a little more rain. That's really the negative, and that's well worth it. Yeah, no, I think great schools, great parks, trails, beaches, lots of stuff to do for free. Lots of stuff to do on a sunny day. I think when you have the deep cove parking problems that you see in the summer, it's a sign that you're in a desirable neck of the woods. I think the biggest standout negative is, you're at the mercy of a bridge and you get a little more rain being at the base of the mountains. So not for everybody that needs that vitamin D.
My first one, I don't necessarily have an order of these. I like different things about different areas, and I'll kind of touch on them, but I've kind of highlighted a few. So let's start with East Vancouver for no other reason than let's go west to east. There are some pockets in East Van that are phenomenal, that have similar feelings to North Vancouver, that people grew up in and don't ever want to leave, and will wait till they can afford a house in that neighborhood, even if it takes them an extra few years to upsize, because they don't want to leave the neighborhood and just of how good they are. Some of those neighborhoods are Grandview Woodlands, Hastings, Sunrise, even out like around Renfrew, around Commercial Drive in Victoria. Why people love them so much is parks. Is Trout Lake, is New Brighton Park on the water, is East Van is kind of unique in a way that there are dozens and dozens and dozens of little parks that are hidden on quiet streets that nobody really knows about unless you have lived in those neighborhoods, which is really cool. And the typical kind of product types in those neighborhoods are the most common family home nowadays is that half duplex in East Vancouver. And they're just kind of littered throughout the streets of East Van. Most of them are newer construction, so they start at kind of higher price points, but you're getting a 5-year-old or brand new half duplex that is 3 bedrooms. They start around 1,200 square feet. And those, I'd say on the low end, would be in the 1.3 range right now. But if you're getting something that is a little more spacious, livable for a family of, let's say, 4 with 2 kids, you are 1,600 square feet. And depending how far east you're going, you're going to be in the range of 1.6 to 1.8 kind of thing. I'd say that one of the negatives for family homes in East Vancouver is there's just kind of a lack of townhomes. So that like entry level really is half duplex. There are lots of condos throughout East Van, but the townhouse developments, there just is not very many of them. So that like lower price point, if you're trying to be for 1,400 or 1,500 square feet in most communities around Greater Vancouver, you're probably going to be looking at townhomes. Versus East Van, you're kind of forced to go straight to half duplex, which might cost you an extra couple $100K.
And I guess just on that note, there are townhomes in like Champlain Heights, like Southeast Vancouver, but just the dynamic, just the way the sequence that Vancouver was developed is why there's very few townhomes in those neighborhoods that you're talking about, right? It's more likely to buy an old dilapidated house sitting on a 33 and converting that into a duplex, front, back often is what you see. Whereas townhouse communities like Port Moody, Coquitlam, Burnaby, New West, where they exist, they're large plots of land that were never developed where they put a townhouse community. It's not, East Van was developed, these areas were developed far earlier. And the idea of assembling a block to create townhomes that's not what you do in East Vancouver. That's why there's more selection of half duplexes. So the half duplex is the townhouse in that market. That is what it is. It's just because you're working with smaller lots. Yeah. And when you compare it to Port Moody, townhouses are on multi-acre sites that were never developed before. We sold a beautiful front back half duplex in Grandview Woodlands area, and it was, it's charming. Like, yes, you're in the middle of the city, which always has a buzz and a hum, but the streets, like the curb appeal in the streets, the tree-lined streets, the changing colors in fall, the proximity to downtown, the little neighborhood parks, I see the allure. I see that the professional that works downtown or works out in the west side, maybe UBC, that doesn't want to go much further east. They're willing to live in a smaller place. They don't need a single family home, and they're okay with a 1,500 square foot half duplex. I totally get that. And for young families, parking in front of your home and walking up to your half duplex is probably the modern day single family home, for most. And with the density changing from these half duplexes to more 3 and 4 plexes, it's going to get tighter. I think there's still some things they got to work out, but I do like the idea of just more I could see them fitting more than a duplex on a 33. I struggle to see them fitting 4 units, but I could see 3. And I'm very interested to see what the design and architecture starts looking like in the next decade for those small lots.
Mm-hmm. Just quickly touch on single family in the neighborhoods if you're wanting to make that jump up to single family from half duplex. It's going to be an extra few $100,000. The East Vancouver is littered with 1900 to 1950s homes that a lot of them not super well taken care of. A lot of them are small. And why most families decide to go half duplex versus single family here is the floor plans often are better. Even if they're slightly smaller square footage in those half duplexes and the newer half duplexes, you're spending 1.6, 1.7 for half duplex versus that is essentially land value for a 33 by 122, which is the common lot size in East Van, for basically a teardown. And those homes maybe are in the range of 1,500 to 2,000 square feet with worse layouts that need full renovation. So if you can afford to go up into that renovated older home, you're probably going to be in the neighborhood of 2.2 to 2.3 kind of range.
My turn, Denny?
Let's hear it.
Are we, my second, I guess there's no order, but there's an order. The second pick that I've gone with is for single family home buyers. This is for a young family that's focused on a single family home. And the standout option to me is Central Coquitlam. And when I'm talking about Central Coquitlam, I'm also going to include like the surrounding areas. Let's call it Coquitlam West, Harbour Chines, Harbour Place, Chines Site, Upper Ranch Park, Upper Millardville. I'm talking about like that higher plateau on the west side of Coquitlam. Coquitlam is a massive city, and Westwood Plateau is very deep in it, and the area that I'm most focused here on is the part that's closer to Burnaby, closer to the highway, closer to Vancouver. So the allure for Central Coquitlam is it has excellent single-family home selection. And, for many people that grew up in Vancouver, struggle to go east, Central Coquitlam isn't that far east. From a commuting perspective, you have quick highway access. From a transit perspective, you have the SkyTrain going there now. From buying a single family home perspective, you have better selection than anywhere west for the price point. And to put that in perspective, like a house, like a single family home, call it a 2,000 square foot mid-century single family home on a quiet street might start at around 1.5. If it's less than 1.5, you're dealing with a bit of a project, but 1.5 gets you into movable, live-in, ready home. At 1.7, you're getting something that's 2,000, 2,500 square feet that's more updated. And these are often on 8,000 square foot lots. So when you're thinking of, let's call it a 2,500 square foot single family home that's 50 years old on an 8,000 square foot lot for 1.5, 1.7, 2 million if it's really nicely updated, renovated, it's probably the best value you get anywhere west of that. I mean, you get a lot more value as you go east, but west, to me, it's a standout option. And in a world where density if they ever do increase their density and they follow through with the NDP, David Ebby's push for 4 to 6 units, it's much easier to put 4 to 6 units on an 8,000 square foot lot than it is on a Vancouver 4,000 square foot lot. So not that these young families want to do that, but it's good to know that you have the value of land as a potential backup investment in case your house burns down one day.
Very dark.
Why would a young family choose Coquitlam, Central Coquitlam? Well, I mean, it's safe. The streets are quiet. It has good schools. It has Mundy Park, Coquitlam Lake, Como Lake. It has schools that are like for sports. It has top-notch football, basketball, soccer, or hockey programs. People drive there. You name the sport, Coquitlam has a high school or a private club that has a top team in the province in that sport. So, for me, I got 3 boys. Sports are more important right now. And we're always getting beat by Coquitlam. Not always, but they have great sport programs. So and that's in schools and in community sports. I think that I touched on the bill, like the density play in a world where Bill 44 becomes the norm, which is the 4 to 6 units. Coquitlam has great potential for the price points, particularly like you can buy a house sitting on a 9,000 square foot lot for like 1.6. It may not be a pretty house, but that's a lot of land and a pretty good location in a world where you can develop 4 to 6 units on it. And if you're not worried about development potential, you just want a nicer home. A newer 2,500 square foot home on a 4,000 square foot lot is about 2.2 million in Coquitlam. That's like something that's 2 years old. Basically, newer homes, whether they're 2 years old, 5 years old, 10 years old, they're selling at replacement value or below replacement value in a lot of cases. And they're definitely not there's no builder margin in that market right now. So, in terms of buying land to develop on for a single family home, all I would caution is you might not get exactly what you want with an existing home, but there's some pretty good deals, when you equate the cost of construction with the existing homes. So a 2,500 square foot newer home for 2.2 compared to, other markets, I think in Vancouver, that would not get you that would get you a 100-year-old home in Vancouver on a 33-foot lot. A 10-year-old home, a 5,000 square foot home on an 8,000 square foot lot is about 2.6, 2.7. And if you wanted like a new 2-year-old 5,500 square foot home on a 9,000 square foot, like an 8 to 10,000 square foot lot, you're talking about like 3.1 to 3.3. These are at or under replacement value. So all in all, when I think of the schools, the sports, the parks, the safety factor, the lot sizes, the housing selection, Central Coquitlam and the surrounding sub-areas to me is a standout option. And one area that's kind of, I guess, notable mention, a little secret pocket for most, I would say, is you cross the border into Port Moody, and I think Glen Eyre is a very desirable pocket where you get a lot of people that don't leave it. And Glen Eyre is kind of an extension of Coquitlam West in a stretch. Different city, but very close. So that would be my second pick, Denny, and that's for the young family looking for a house.
Next, I'll go to. This city has a reputation, and you tell me if you can think of which city it is. The reputation is newlyweds or nearly deads.
Newlyweds or nearly Port Moody?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Port Moody is...
I didn't know it had such an aging reputation, but definitely newlyweds, 100%.
It's definitely changing, and it's way more young people today than it was 10 years ago. Yeah. When the SkyTrain went in, 7, 8, 9 years ago, something in that range, and it's kind of like exploded since then. I'd say the majority of the reason that people move to Port Moody is lifestyle. It has almost all of the amenities that the North Shore has that Jamie has come to love. We have a couple amazing lakes in the summer.
Minus a ski hill, Denny. They don't have a ski hill.
That's the one thing, okay? That's the one thing. We have like 2 awesome lakes in the summer, Bunsen and...
Yeah.
We have a ton of hiking. We have beaches in Anmore and Belcarra. We have Brewers Row. We have Rocky Point Park. Proximity, like with SkyTrain to downtown, and the West Coast Express now is 35 or 40 minutes to downtown. It is a pretty awesome place to live lifestyle-wise, and that is why so many young families are choosing it. The cool thing about real estate in Port Moody is even though it's a really small city, it has a really good variety of product types. There are the newer stacked 3-level townhomes with the tandem garages that kind of start in the 1.1, 1.2 range. There are the more condo style 3-bedroom townhomes that have up and down units that have underground parking that kind of start in the $900,000 range off Clark or off St. John's. And then you go up the hill and you get the 20 to 30-year-old townhomes that are 1,300 square feet all the way up to 3,500 square feet off Parkside, in Heritage Mountain, Heritage Woods area. And those, I mean, you can get a 3-bedroom townhouse up the hill for $1 million. And then those kind of larger units that are more geared towards downsizers, but still offer these like huge floor plans and single family feel off Parkside for 1.4. And you're going to get 2,500 to 3,000 square feet versus
some of them are even more too, right? Like you're talking 101 Parkside?
Yeah.
Those are better than most house layouts, those units.
Totally. There was a 3,500 square foot unit that sold recently for under 1.5.
3,500 square feet.
3,500 square feet.
Phenomenal layout for what you're getting there.
Totally.
Yeah.
And making the jump to single family, you also have this crazy variety throughout Port Moody. There's the older homes that are kind of south of St. John's that you might get into for 1.5 kind of starting price point, or up Gatensbury. And then going up the hill in Heritage Woods, it's a lot of newer construction. That kind of neighborhood started in the late 80s. But you get these massive floor plans that will never be created again, that are 4,500 square feet, that a lot of them are dated and they kind of start maybe in the 1.8 kind of range, but there are footprints that you just don't really find in a lot of other neighborhoods throughout Greater Vancouver. It's a pretty cool place to live. Especially up the mountain, that's where I live, and where a lot of these different product types, townhomes, half duplexes, and single families are up the mountain. It's a neighborhood that feels like you're so far out of the city, even though you are, 6 minutes back down to Cedarbrooke and Newport Village for all the shopping, and Brewers Row and Rocky Point Park and all that.
I should also add, like you're talking about, we're talking about young family options here. They have Klahani, which is kind of like a mini Ravenwoods, the area that I was talking about, where you have, a big amenity center with a pool that kind of is the community hub. You have kids that mob up and form a gang and roam the streets and take over. You have Halloween trick-or-treaters, hundreds of them. Port Moody has, as you're talking about, they have a little mix of everything when it comes to house. I think the downside of Port Moody is just it's not big, in terms of there's not a lot of there's a fair amount of properties, but there's just not a lot compared to other neighboring communities. When your kids get older, say you go up Heritage Mountain. When you get older, you can go down to Newport Village, get a nice spacious condo. When your kids get older, they can go to Klahani, Cedarbrooke, get a smaller condo. It's got options for all generations. And water being there, parks, the two lakes. Yeah, I get it. I get why it's become more popular than other areas. I think the only knock on it is, Denny, there's an obvious knock to me. What would you say is the one deterrent that prevents some buyers from considering Port Moody, or frustrates buyers that live in Port Moody?
For me personally, it's probably traffic.
There you go. Yeah.
There's one way in and out, and that's St. John's. I'd say the other thing is proximity to like winter activities, which would be North Shore skiing or Whistler. Like you being on the North Shore to Whistler is what, an hour 20 maybe, versus living in Port Moody's 2 hours, 2:15 kind of range. Yeah. So I think just proximity, getting out of Port Moody, especially at rush hour, is, I would say, the biggest negative.
If you're working in the west side of Vancouver, Richmond, or, there's certain areas where it's just too congested.
Yeah.
It is a traffic. It can be a traffic jam, but it wasn't designed. The streets weren't designed for the beauty of Port Moody, and there is more towers coming. There's more people coming. So I don't think the traffic's going to get any better. No. But in terms of outdoor nature and beauty, and if you don't have to do that commute, or you can off hours commute it, or you work shift work or whatever it is, it's a great place to consider. People don't leave it. My turn. Is it my turn?
Your turn.
Okay. I'm going to go notable mention on this before I get into my actual one. My actual area of focus is Langley, particularly Willoughby, 200 Street. Notable mention, though, from ChatGPT was Queen's Park, New West.
Oh.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's small area, small housing options, beautiful. Huge bias. Huge bias for me. I used to live there. I love it. But yeah, Queen's Park got notable mention, and it is one of those neighborhoods. I think the last year that I was there, I think we had 500 trick-or-treaters at our door, and our neighbors had like 700 that was slightly better decorated than ours. So there's a lot of kids, a lot of parks, but I'm talking about Willoughby Langley, because I think main reason for talking about Willoughby Langley is it's developing a skyline that's noticeable from afar. It is one of the areas that I think is going to go through the most development and change in the next 20 to 50 years. And it's already starting. And the fields, the parks, the amenities from like an urban planning perspective with like just access to parks and field space, it's well planned. Like if you look at Google Maps and you look at the Willoughby area, you're going to see a lot of soccer fields from above. And it's just a sign that, and with those soccer fields comes good sport programs, good schools. And when you have three boys like me, those things are important. So why would someone choose Willoughby Langley? Great schools, tons of families, kid-friendly streets. It's safe. Willoughby Community Park is the big park that I was talking about. It has close access to amenities like Willowbrook Mall, Langley Crossing, highway access. And the value, you'd really be going there for the value of a home, for where your dollar goes. Like out of all the options that we've said so far, this is the most east. This is the Fraser Valley option. And unless you grew up there and have your whole life over there, the people that grew up in Vancouver that end up moving over there are moving there for affordability. And what does that affordability mean? Well, a 10-year-old home that's, say, 2,800 square feet, 4 bedrooms, might sell for around $1.55 million. And if that same home existed in North Burnaby, it would probably be $1 million more. So a townhouse, you can get a 3-bedroom townhouse, 5 years old. You've been looking at a few of these, Denny, but the median price point in the last 60 days for like a 1,500 square foot 3-bedroom townhouse, this is just kind of an example product that's 5 years old, is $925,000. But the range in these townhomes is, call it $825,000 to $1 million. And we're not talking about older townhomes. We're talking about 5, 10-year-old townhomes, sometimes 2-year-old townhomes. But Willoughby is a relatively new community. It did not exist even close to what it is 20 years ago. It used to drive down 200th and it was lined with trees. Then there was a period about a decade ago that was lined with development for sale signs. And then now you're actually starting to see the skyline come together. And our company, Oakwin, even has a new head office out that way. It's very convenient from a driving perspective to get to 200th Street yet with that highway access there. They are talking about rapid transit going through Cloverdale to Langley City. So that will connect it a little bit more from some other angles. But yeah, it's a value play. You go to Willoughby because you want your kids to be covered with schools and parks and good schools and a safe environment. And you also want a good layout and a house that's going to cause you little to no problems because you want to buy a newer home. Anything to add, Denny? You've had a few clients look out that way. What are you seeing out there?
Change.
Yeah.
So many young families are moving that way for space. And on the townhouse front, even you can get new construction townhomes under $900,000 right now, 3 bedrooms that are 13, 14, 1,500 square feet with tandem garages. So just the options out there for single family type units, I guess.
Yeah. Well, that's my Willoughby pick. You have one more, don't you?
Your kids are going to have a lot of friends there. Because these communities are really close together versus, Coquitlam West or Central Coquitlam, your last one that you talked about. These are mostly single family in those neighborhoods, and they're spread out, which means less kids close by for your kids versus Willoughby. Like you might be in a townhouse complex with 150 units and there might be 200 kids in there.
Yeah.
Last one for me, also the most affordable area that I'll talk about is Burke Mountain, and I'll kind of loop in Port Coquitlam in there too. Burke Mountain is a newer community, which means you get new, but they have a ton of different product types. So it's mostly townhomes up there with single family, but they have done a pretty good job, I think, in building larger townhome units that feel like single family for more affordable options for young families. So what you're going to find up there for 3-bedroom townhomes is anything from like 1,150 square feet that was built 10 years ago to some new construction projects that are doing over 2,000 square foot units that are 4 bedrooms that have big basements, some of them 10-foot ceiling basements that could make a good golf simulator room.
What ceiling height do you need for a golf simulator, Denny?
10 feet.
Okay, 10 feet. All right, just to be safe, just checking. Yeah.
You could do it with 9, but then you're not going to be able to swing driver, and that's not as fun. Your entry-level price points, Burke Mountain, you are probably going to start in like the $950 range for a 3-bedroom townhouse that's 10 to 15 years old, and it goes up from there. The high sale, do you have any guesses what the high sale of a single-family home was in Burke Mountain? Because this is higher than I thought.
And what?
This calendar year so far.
This year.
I'll give you some specs. It was a 4,200 square foot home on a 10,000 square foot lot, built in 2014 with a full reno. Because I compare this.
Sorry?
I compared to Port Moody, and I'd say if this house existed in Port Moody, it'd be similar to like Heritage Peak Road or like one of those. And that would be in the range of like 3.5. And moving to Burke Mountain.
I mean, you said high sale, so I have a bias towards choosing a high number. If you didn't start with that, I would be choosing a lower number. But I'm going to go with 2.7.
2.912.
Okay.
So great variety of product type in Burke Mountain. And it is, I mean, all of your neighbors are going to be very similar to you. If you're a young family, they're going to be people that are 30 to 45 with 1 to 3 kids that move there for the product types, the townhomes, the single family that are more affordable. And it's building a really good community feel with more amenities and things like that are coming in the neighborhood.
You're talking about the highest sale. Just to go back to that for a moment. I had a client look at a place that was called a couple years old. So like almost brand new. I'm going to call it 5 years old. I don't remember the exact specs. About 4,000 square foot home. And it was about 2.2. 4,000 square foot newer home in Burke Mountain for 2.2. Yeah. So that must have been an absolute stunning home with outdoor space and high-end finishes. Like the lure to Burke Mountain is the same lure to Willoughby in a sense. You know, it's you get newer, you get more bang for your buck, and it's a beautiful place to live. There's views everywhere. Yeah. It's strange to me that it's a Coquitlam address and not a Port Coquitlam address. Yeah. But I just don't understand. I don't know what I don't know.
Yeah. On the other side, though, the low end for single family, and remember, this is a new community that most of the construction is like in the last 15 years. So this was a 2,600 square foot home on a 3,000 square foot lot built in 2019 at low sale 1.54. So you can get single family for less money than you get, new. This is a 5-year-old home. You get new construction for less than you would, the entry level tear down in Port Moody, for example, or that land value lot in Coquitlam, Central Coquitlam that you're talking about. So you get a lot more house structure for your dollar volume there. Yeah.
And although I have not trick-or-treated in Burke Mountain, I imagine it's got some pockets. That's absolute chaos.
The one neighborhood I'll mention in Port Coquitlam, just because of how it's exploded over the last maybe 10 years or so, is Ranger Lane in the Fremont area of Poco that is just west of the river. There are so many amenities in that neighborhood now. There are breweries, there are restaurants, there's Walmart, there's a Costco, there's you don't really have to leave that area anymore.
It's one of those kids play zone warehouses where you just stick your kids in and and stare at your phone for an hour.
Sounds like you have some experience with those.
Once.
But the Ranger Lane community, there's 300 plus townhomes in there. And talk about trick-or-treating. That neighborhood is we have a few clients that live there, and they just they look forward to that day every year because it's a parent and a kid's playground. Yeah. It is kids running around like crazy trick-or-treating. It is parents that are setting up haunted houses in their garages for all the kids to come through. And then it's a dad sitting on the driveway having a beer with their buddy next door kind of thing. It's very, very community feel, which is a very cool spot for young families.
If you do value feeling like you're away from it, it's a short walk down a trail to get to, what do you get? The views of Pitt Lake, I think, out that way. It's stunning, nature views a little more east of this Ranger Lane community and Burke Mountain as a whole. For the outdoor enthusiasts, it's a great option as well. Aside from the amenities, aside from the value of new home, you have nature right there. Yeah. Good choice, Denny. Good choice.
Thanks.
So, hope you got some value out of this. Young families listening in that made it to the end. Denny, any closing notes? Anything to share?
If you're a young family and you're looking to upsize, Jamie, where are you going?
Oh, well, you know what? I'm a young family and I'm a realtor, Denny. So I'd say reach out to us. It's gonna, there's no straight answer. It largely depends on work, but if you're unclear, if your work's flexible, your commute's flexible, and you just need to chat it through with someone, we have this conversation all the time, and we'd love to help bring some clarity to that. So reach out if we can be of help.